This is an exclusive report from Jamaica's squatting crisis. Homes, land, and the fight for security. Across Jamaica, thousands of families are living on land they do not legally own. Some have occupied these properties for decades. Many have constructed concrete houses, connected electricity and water, raised children, and established entire communities, yet without a registered title, lease, or other legally recognized right to the land. Their homes can remain vulnerable to eviction and demolition. The issue returned to national attention following the August 2026 demolition of homes at Cooper's Pen in Trelawny. Residents said they were caught by surprise. Heavy equipment entered the community before dawn. Some families claimed they had lived on the property for more than 30 years. But behind that emotional confrontation is a much larger national crisis, one involving property, Jamaica's housing shortage, disputed ownership, weak enforcement, political intervention, and decades of unplanned development. This is not simply a story about people occupying land illegally. It is also a story about Jamaicans who cannot afford to enter the formal housing market and a country struggling to balance compassion with the rule of law. A crisis decades in the making. Squatting, often described by the government as informal settlement, generally occurs when individuals occupy and develop land without the permission of its legal owner. The land may belong to the government, a private company, an individual, or an estate with ownership that has become difficult to determine. Jamaica has not recently published a definitive national count covering every informal settlement. However, early official estimates identified more than 700 residential squatter settlements containing over 100,000 households. Those figures are now more than a decade old and should not be presented as the current total. Nevertheless, they demonstrate the enormous scale of the challenge and why squatting cannot be treated as a collection of isolated incidents. Some informal settlements contain only a handful of structures. Others have developed into large communities with shops, churches, transportation networks, and generations of residents. The physical permanence of these communities can create a powerful sense of ownership, but investing money in a structure does not automatically establish legal ownership of the land beneath it. Why Jamaicans squat? For many families, squatting is not their first housing choice. It is the option that remains after the formal market becomes unaffordable. Jamaica is estimated to have a housing shortage of approximately 150,000 units. The government has acknowledged that the country is not constructing homes quickly enough to meet demand. The shortage pushes prices higher, while the cost of construction, land, infrastructure, and mortgage financing places formal home ownerships beyond the reach of many low-income workers. A household may earn enough to pay rent or gradually build a small structure, but still fail to meet the income, deposit, or credit requirements for a mortgage. This creates a dangerous contradiction. Families can afford to build one room at a time, but they cannot afford to purchase serviced land through the formal market. Other factors contributing to squatting include rural to urban migration in search of employment, displacement caused by fires, floods, or family breakdown, unresolved inheritance and family land disputes, limited access to affordable rental housing, slow land titling and administrative processes, political promises or unofficial assurances, and poor monitoring of vacant private and government owned land. Once the first structures appear and no enforcement action is taken, other families may conclude that the occupation has been accepted. Over time, wooden structures become concrete houses, and the temporary settlement becomes a permanent community. That delay makes eventual enforcement far more difficult and far more painful. Cooper's Pen Flashpoint. The demolition at Cooper's Pen illustrates how complicated these disputes can become. Early reports differed on the precise number of houses destroyed, with accounts ranging from approximately 20 structures to homes belonging to more than 30 families. Residents said they received no immediate warning and were given little opportunity to remove their belongings. Later reporting indicated that the dispute involved the Orange Grove property, reportedly owned by New Falmouth Resorts Limited. According to Nationwide News, the company filed a lawsuit in 2007 against 99 people accused of occupying the property without permission. In 2010, the Supreme Court reportedly ruled in favor of the company, ordered recovery of possession, and awarded damages against the defendants. The government subsequently attempted to facilitate the acquisition and possible regularization of the property. However, later court applications seeking to stop the evictions were unsuccessful, and the Court of Appeal reportedly upheld the relevant rulings in 2016. The demolition therefore raises two separate but connected questions. The first is whether the owner was legally entitled to recover the property. The second is whether the enforcement process gave affected families adequate notice, transparency, and humanitarian protection. A valid court order does not erase the human consequences of an eviction. At the same time, hardship does not automatically cancel the legal rights of a property owner. That uncomfortable tension lies at the center of Jamaica's squatting crisis. Does living on land for years make you yours? One of the most widespread misconceptions is that living on land for a certain number of years automatically makes the occupant its owner. Jamaican law can recognize claims based on adverse possession, but occupation alone is not enough. Such cases depend on specific facts, including the character and continuity of possession, the rights of the registered owner, the type of land involved, and whether the occupation was with or without permission. A person cannot safely assume that paying utility bills, property taxes, or constructing a concrete house proves ownership. Those records may establish occupation or expenditure, but they do not necessarily establish title. Residents who believe they have acquired legal rights should obtain independent legal advice and have the ownership history investigated. They should not rely solely on verbal promises, political assurances, or the length of time spent on the property. Likewise, prospective land purchasers must ensure that the person collecting money is legally authorized to sell the property. Many families have lost their savings after purchasing supposed plots from individuals who did not own the land. The rights of property owners. Any serious discussion of squatting must also acknowledge the position of lawful landowners. Private property may remain undeveloped for years because of financing problems, estate disputes, planning approvals, or long term investment decisions. Its apparent vacancy does not mean that it is abandoned or available for occupation. An owner who discovers dozens of structures on a property may face years of litigation and significant legal expenses before possession can be recovered. If court orders cannot be enforced, confidence in Jamaica's land registration and justice systems is weakened. It could also discourage investment and create the impression that land can be taken through occupation. Government owned land presents a different but equal serious challenge. Land intended for a school, roadway, housing project, or health facility cannot easily serve its public purpose once it has been occupied and developed. Jamaica must therefore protect lawful ownership while ensuring that enforcement does not become unnecessarily cruel or chaotic. Regularization is not always possible. Regularization involves legally recognizing a settlement, surveying the land, establishing boundaries, installing infrastructure, and allowing qualified occupants to purchase or lease their lots. Where feasible, this can transform an informal community into a legally recognized neighborhood. The Housing Agency of Jamaica has a specific responsibility for settlement regularization. Its work can include infrastructure improvements, land titling, and the redevelopment of older communities. In 2025, the government reported that more than 7,000 titles were being held by the agency because of issues including surveying complications and outstanding balances. An amnesty was announced for qualifying clients with smaller unpaid amounts intended to accelerate the delivery of titles. But not every settlement can be regularized. Regularization may be impossible where the land is privately owned and the owner does not wish to sell. The location is environmentally dangerous. The property is required for public infrastructure. Buildings violate critical planning requirements. The land is affected by unresolved legal claims, and the cost of servicing the community is prohibitive. In those circumstances, relocation may be the only responsible option. However, relocation requires suitable land, financing, social support, and realistic payment arrangements. Simply removing residents without addressing where they will go may transfer the same problem to another location. The political dimension. Squatting has long been politically sensitive in Jamaica. Governments may hesitate to act against large communities because enforcement can displace voters and create powerful images of families losing their homes. Residents may also receive informal assurances that their occupation will eventually be regularized. When those assurances are not supported by a completed acquisition, formal lease, or registered title, families can develop a false sense of security. Successive administrations have announced surveys, databases, land titling programs, housing targets, and community upgrading initiatives. While some residents have benefited, the overall problem persists. Political representatives have an important role in securing humanitarian assistance and facilitating negotiations, but they must not lead residents to believe that political intervention can automatically defeat private ownership or overturn a court order. Promises without legal documentation can encourage further construction and make the eventual consequences more devastating. What must change? Jamaica cannot demolish its way out of this crisis, but the country also cannot allow informal occupation to continue unchecked. A credible national strategy should begin with a complete, publicly accountable audit of informal settlements and government owned land. Authorities must know where settlements are located, who owns the land, how many people are affected, and whether each location is suitable for regularization. Settlements could then be classified into three categories: communities suitable for regularization and upgrading, communities requiring partial redevelopment or relocation, settlements on dangerous, private, or essential public land where continued occupation cannot be permitted. The government should also introduce the clear national eviction protocol except where an immediate danger exists. That framework should require verified legal authority, reasonable notice, communication with residents, protection for children and vulnerable people, and an opportunity to retrieve personal belongings. A protocol would not prevent lawful enforcement. It would ensure that enforcement is orderly, transparent, and humane. Other necessary reforms include faster delivery of affordable service lots, more low income rental housing, incremental housing programs allowing families to build legally over time, quicker land titling and estate administration processes, stronger monitoring of vacant government property, Earlier action against new illegal construction, public education about titles, leases, and fraudulent land sales, financial arrangements that reflect the income realities of poorer households. The most effective intervention occurs before a settlement expands, not after hundreds of families have built permanent homes. Subscribe today, turn on notifications, and never miss the stories that matter most. Jamaica News Now, your Highlands, your news, right now.